Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Self Leadership Podcast, where today both Anna and I are joined by Diego. I think this will be a great episode for anybody who is currently feeling a little bit burned out, too busy, or looking to find some room to be more creative. This could absolutely be the episode for you. I personally took from it the idea that a nap might just be the most productive thing that you can do today. So without further ado, let's move into the conversation itself and welcome Diego to the Self Leadership Podcast.
Hi, Josh. Very warm welcome, Diego. Could you tell our listeners a bit about yourself?
Thanks for having me here, first of all. I'm Diego. I'm a product designer. I used to work with Hannah and Josh back a few years ago. Since then, I think a bunch of stuff happened in my life and learned some things, and maybe I'm here to share some of the learnings I've been picking up during this time apart.
Now you've piqued our curiosity, Diego.
You know a little bit already what I've been doing.
I do, but I want our listeners to know a bit as well.
Yeah. So we used to work together at Tomato Pay, and after that I kept working a little bit in fintech. I joined a much bigger company, a scale up, a little bit more of a corporate environment, which, as probably a lot of people probably know, corporate environments are not the best environment for creative people. When there's a lot of internal politics, and productivity is always prioritized over creative work, and that's something that makes people like me suffering quite a bit, and it drives you eventually drives you to a bit of a creative burnout, which is something that happened to me. Also, back in the days, I was trying to do even some side project. I had my business on the side. So, 14 hours in front of a laptop, switching context because I have my clients, I have my full-time job, and the full-time job wasn't really, making me feel good about what I was doing. And eventually I just decided to cut everything off. And I used to live in London at the time. And so I left the job. I was almost invited to leave the job. I'm gonna be honest here because of course, when you're not happy about what you're doing, you just you feel miserable. When you are miserable, as many things any type of situation in life, you make also the people around yourself miserable. So a lot of friction with my manager and stuff like that. And it was probably the best thing to do, to part ways. And so I was we talked. And I was it's time for me to move on from here. I was actually happy about it. So after that, I left London as well. I went back to Italy, where I'm originally from and where I am now, by the way. I spent a little bit of time with my family, with my friends after almost 10 years of living in London. So I was a little bit of family and friends time. And so after a couple of months enjoying the Italian summer, etc., I've decided to do something a little crazy because I needed to find my spark again. And so I took on a journey that lasted 7 months. And it took me all the way from my hometown here in Italy, just a few kilometers north of Milan, all the way to Bali in Indonesia without flying. I did the whole journey by land. And it was crazy. But just probably the best experience of my life so far, I think, of course. And it gave me the opportunity to visit places that you couldn't even think about going, like Iran, for example, or I've been in Afghanistan as well. Traveling that way, it was the best for me because it really gave me a perspective of how things can change one step after the other. It's not just flying to a place and spending 6 months there. I've been doing that. I've been traveling a lot even before, so it wasn't my first time traveling. I'm a huge fan of soul traveling, and I have experience. It was the first time I did something like that extreme, I would say. And it really, it gave me a completely different perspective about traveling as well. And it's something that I always sense about, even when I was visiting countries before. For me, it wasn't never really about go visiting the landmark. It was always about, or even the experiencing the cuisine, etc. Of course, those are important parts as well. I'm Italian, we're all about landmark and cuisine. But yeah, it's maybe I'll go looking for something else around the world, and figure in this trip in particular, the people you meet along the way. And actually I came to understand how, like, we say, like, everybody that we meet in our life is a reflection of ourselves.
Mhm.
And we keep meeting so many different people one after the other, like in such different places. You just see a lot of version of yourself all together, and then that's just like the a little magic happens in that.
So powerful.
I didn't figure until I was back home about this. Because when you are in the experience itself, you just like, basically it's like you're doing field research. You're just collecting data, but you don't have the time and the right mindset to actually think through what you're experiencing and analyze that. Let's talk a little bit like with a bit of business lingo maybe, because I know this is going to go on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, like just like as well, like business and entrepreneurship is a metaphor of like it's a journey as well. So yeah, it applies.
I was just going to say, you're given a situation where you're burned out, and it's
Hmm.
time for a break.
Yeah,
And obviously, I don't want to speak for everybody, but like I feel like the fair interpretation of that is, I'll go and sit on a beach and recharge for
yeah.
X amount of time. It sounds like you frame this more as a challenge. You could have done it in an easier way and done maybe easier things. So was that intentional? And if so, like what were you hoping to gain from framing it as an adventure and a challenge that you wouldn't have got if you'd just gone to rest?
Yes, that's like the thing I was talking about earlier about the finding again the spark. Because if I was just going and chill on a beach or like on an island, something like that, of course I would have, like, my nervous system would have relaxed and I would probably healed from the burnout like immediately, like after a couple of weeks. But I didn't just want to do that. I did that as well during the trip. I took my time for that as well, like to enjoy myself a little. But I also wanted to experience something that was like actually, because I know there was something for me there. Just didn't want to have like a long holiday. I just wanted to make something out of it. And yeah, also, as I was saying, having traveled extensively even before that, traveling solo, I already knew like the type of growth that can happen in certain situations. And so I always push my friends to like go solo, go travel solo. They never do it, but like, but I think it's so important to do, like, I don't know, it's just so another way also for me to be creative. I remember that before planning that before doing the trip, I was actually, I'm a designer, and one of the tools I use is like whiteboarding tools like FigJam or Miro. I literally planned part of the trip on FigJam. I was like, like linking things and stuff. So it's just like, it's another way to have like a design approach also to challenges, to problem, etc. Because growth always can only happen when you face problems and struggles and frictions. So
Yeah,
you can design your path there.
of course. And was there anything in particular that made you choose that path, as in to Indonesia and Bali as a destination?
It was just the longest way I could do without flying, basically. And at the beginning, I wanted to do the whole around the world trip, but then once I was like, I figured that once I was in Indonesia, it was just too difficult to cross the Pacific, and it was enough. By the time I was in Indonesia, I was like, okay, I've experienced enough now. I'm ready to go back home. And it was fun when I went back home because it was like a 16-hour flight. I remember that I watched a YouTube video before. It was like this German guy. He was like super young, like 21 or something like that. And he tried to hitchhike the world, like just like do the round the world trip just hitchhiking. He didn't manage to do it. Like, it's a long story, even a little bit sad. Like, maybe I'll send you the link if you guys want to see it. It's like, but it was very inspirational. You see like such a young person, embarking on such a journey. And like, I realized that when you see things in life that make you feel something, because that was like, I actually watched his documentary, and he actually something that really stayed with me.
Mm.
And when something makes you feel something, when you see, experience, see or listen to a story, etc., it makes you feel something, it's probably because you should, that's where you should go. You know, and so I just like, it was like, why not? Why not me? Everybody, like, literally everybody can do things like this. I don't want to sound like too motivational or stuff like that. Just like one step at a time. You can go everywhere one step at a time. Well, for me, it was like one bus ride at a time, and like some hitchhiking and some like crazy taxi drive in Afghanistan on the mountain, stuff like that. Like another thing that many people ask me was about finding the courage to do this. You don't have the courage to do this, but you just like, again, you do like one step at a time. You build the courage on the way. Like if you don't have to face anything, if you're just like overthinking it before taking actions, you're not gonna do it anyway. So you might as well
Jump
just
in.
yourself like out of a cliff.
Oh, well, Diego, I hear you when you say everybody can do this, but I think it's important to say that for women, solo traveling, especially to certain countries, is more problematic. So
That's absolutely fair. Yeah, of course. I have to say that I met a lot of like solo traveler women, even in Iran, and not in Afghanistan, of course. I met women, like Western women, traveling about with maybe with their husband or not many. But I was on a WhatsApp group, like which like for people traveling in Afghanistan, and there was like a girl traveling solo through Afghanistan, and she was like sharing pictures of the, and she stayed like for like quite a long time in the country as well. So of course it's not as easy for a woman. Let's be clear about that. But I mean, like solo traveling, like if you go in Asia, there's like plenty of women solo traveling. Solo traveling itself, it's doable by anybody.
yeah.
And it's like if you go to I don't know, like Japan, China, or like even Vietnam, etc., they're relatively safe country. It's safer going out like at nighttime in Asia than in Europe anyway.
Yeah. No, that's
Much safer. It's definitely much safer. And even the Middle East, like Iran, probably one of the safest countries I've been. It's more like patriarchal, the culture probably. But actually, I'm not really sure I can say this about Iran, to be honest, because like I met like a lot of women, very creative people, and they actually thrive and they do a lot of things, and it's just like, it's probably a lot of times is also the media, what we hear from the Western media. Let me say that.
fair challenge.
Afghanistan is a completely different situation, of course. But even there, like we get like a part from the media of Afghanistan, which is quite extreme. But the country is just like the Taliban government is very new, and they is like so fragmented. They don't enforce the same rules in every part of the country. I literally spent like 2 hours in a like like how do you say, like an underwear shop for ladies in Herat in Afghanistan. I was just there sitting waiting for the guy that was working there. But there was like women without, like just with a hijab, not with the burqa, and just like like looking for bras and panties, and
And you sitting right there.
I was there. I was like, I'm not sure I should be here right now. It was okay.
Oh, brilliant. Well, Diego, sorry to jump in, but your decision to embark on this adventurous journey with the very clear intention of reigniting your spark is for me a prime example of living life intentionally. And what we'd love to know from you is, what does it mean for you to live life intentionally?
For me, living life intentionally, I mean, it's just like finding meanings in every like little small things that we do during our day, as simple as that. So kind of like I like to be ritualistic a little bit, a little bit of witchcraft doesn't is always nice, like that's like I think it's all about that, because when you're intentional, you really rewire the way you think about like the things that you do, and you can find like even there, like you can find growth in every small step you take towards like a certain goal. And the more like you learn to analyze and be really intentional in what you do, the more clear is the path to where you want to be. Because it's just like you take like intentional actions. That's the thing. It's really just like, it doesn't just make things because somebody told you to do it. You just like start doing things because they're gonna lead you somewhere. At the beginning, it's super difficult because it goes like most often than not, it goes against like societal expectation, most like always, most like I would say not most often, like let's say always. And then, and people like when you're very intentional about what you do, like in your day to day, like people around you usually look at you a little weird because you're not following the like pre-packed path. That's the thing, You're not just like mindlessly going through the day. You're actually taking action. It's just like people are like, that guy is weird if he's doing this stuff. And you have to be fine with that if you want to live an intentional life. Eventually, when the result will come, people will be, yeah, of course. Yeah, sure. Now we see. Yeah, okay. But then, yeah, something that I learned recently as well is the people that we become are like we are when we are alone, but the things that we do when we are alone, that's the thing, which is like about being intentional, about being a little ritualistic as well, like dancing in your room alone, like that kind of stuff. It's weird, super weird. If somebody enters the room, you cringe immediately. But that's actually what makes you feel like what leads you to like a more free version of yourself, a more intentional version of yourself. It's all of those small actions. Something really weird I did once, as soon as I came back from my trip and was getting a little bit more like reflective about like my experience and everything. It's like one day I did this exercise. I ate like a whole dish of pasta with my other hand, not the hand I usually use, Like I want to try to do these type of things, which is crazy. Like now that I'm telling it to other people. But it actually, it just opens different paths in your like literally in your brain, like it's a way to experience novelty and to make like better connection within you and also in the outer world as well, even like taking a different path to work, stuff like that, like, it sounds mundane sometimes, but it just like it makes a whole difference because we don't even realize how much time we spend doing the same thing,
On autopilot.
over and over, and like it's just like you're like excluding all of the different opportunities you can have if you just like branch a little, just do something different, just do something crazy when nobody sees,
Yeah.
and then maybe next time do it when somebody is looking at you and see how they react, If they react weird, like if they react, it means you're doing something more,
Yeah.
because otherwise they won't react.
That's fair. Diego, I think it's a great explanation of living intentionally. It
Yeah.
certainly resonates with me as well. I'm curious to understand, where did this explanation come from? Is it something that you've kind of tightened as you've gained more experiences? Did you come across it, a younger version of yourself? Did this come to you on the trip? Where did it come from?
I think a lot. I am a big overthinker myself. Like through my 20s, I've done a lot of different experiences, now. And now in my 30s, like after I did the big one and I got time to actually rest a little, and in the stillness, you can actually, your brain start to work out what you've been experiencing, What I was saying before, like you collect data while you experience and then you analyze the data when you rest. And then, like it's something that happened. You just like start seeing connection, what you've experienced is like the person you were, the person you are now, and you start seeing patterns and patterns and patterns and patterns. It drives you a little crazy sometimes, and you need to like really stay grounded, and you need to learn how to stay grounded as well, when you want to approach like more intentional life. Otherwise, I don't know, just like you get a little bit too woo-woo and whimsical and stuff like that, so like you need to be practical as well. So if you stay grounded and you let the mind do his work without like going too much, but just like learn when it's time to, okay, this is the lesson I learned, now I try to embody it, and then I open to the next one, and then that's like how you come to all of these conclusions. I think you need to find the time to like for stillness. Otherwise, if you keep going, you will burn out eventually. And by the way, when I arrived in Indonesia, before coming back home, the moment I decided that it was time to go back home, because I was burned out of traveling. Burnout will always happen. We will always experience burnout. It's not something that you go through one time in the life and then it's just an indicator. It's time to stop experiencing something, going through something, and take a break and rest and like going on holiday, go like do stuff like that.
I don't think I've ever had two sentences hit me so much in our podcast since we started it, Anna, to be fair. Timely, Diego, thank you. I feel like you're talking to me directly. I know we have some listeners that will benefit from this, but I feel like you're talking to me.
As I was saying earlier, like we always are like find the mirror of the person that we are in that exact moment, you know. So yeah,
Mm.
I think kind of probably you being a coach, it's something that you experience a lot. This right? It's not like really teaching people. It's more about giving them like a reflection of like where they are, I guess.
Completely.
One question I had before we move on to the practices is you've mentioned this idea of kind of burnout as being a circular motion, right? It comes and it goes, and it's kind of on us to spot when this occurs and then react accordingly, analyze the data, and come back. I personally find it quite hard to notice, or often I find I realize too late. So, like, do you have any tips or advice that you can pass on to people? Like, what are some signs that it's a good idea to stop and analyze your data?
So learn like put it like in your like routine, like in being intentional in your day to day. Make sure you're resting and you're like doing just like, you know, for example, like just creative stuff, just for the sake of doing creative stuff. Don't do for being productive or anything like that. And that's how, I mean, like eventually, if you want to have like experience something intense, you're gonna have to like face burnout, like a wall, something like that. You have to be ready for that. But the more you grow, the more you go through life, the more you learn it, you know, and so you kind of prepare. But then if you want to mitigate it through like a longer period of your life, just make sure you are weekends are for like just friends and family, and nighttime, evening time for, I mean, I know there are night holes that are more productive in the night. For me, it's the more early morning. But you know, find a moment in your day where you just like take a nap. I take naps, for example, you know, after lunch I take naps. It's like, and it's just like rest is so important. As like it's the time where you can actually stop and analyze everything and yeah, and get ready for the next rush. That's the thing.
Absolutely. One thing I would just add is it's important to say that there are different levels or intensities of burnout, right?
Mhm.
There is also clinical burnout. There is the kind of burnout where people can't get out of bed anymore because they're so exhausted. And, you know, when you're talking about the cyclicality of it, you're not talking about that level of burnout. And I think that, you know, that level of burnout should totally be preventable and not something that we ever take as a necessary collateral, right? And another term that I recently came across that I really liked is I was talking to a friend, and she said that a year and a half ago she had burnout, and then she was like, but you know what? It was less a burnout and more a bore out. And that really struck me, right? Because a lot of the time, it's not even that we are physically so exhausted because we're doing so much, but it's just we're doing things that are absolutely not aligned with our values and with how we want to be in life. And I feel like the corporate design job was that for you.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just like, I felt like my creativity like pushed down, and for me, I'm all about that, you know. So it's like the person I am, and when you force me into like, you know, like busy work, like BS work, let's go.
You get no energy back from that, do you? So you're giving energy because you have to fulfill the task. So the transfer of energy is one way. Like you're exerting energy to the task, but you're getting none back. And so if you add those days up after 30 days, even your energy level is low.
Yeah, we can say the salary is like the energy we get back, maybe. But at some point, I think like you need to do your thing because no salary will match the missed opportunity of being creative. And so at some point, the only way to you can be creative and avoid as well like creative burnout, etc., is just like do your things. So like adventures, business, starting your business, or like any kind of initiative, like building a community or like you know,
Podcast.
podcasting. Yeah. Any creative activity is just like you know, it's a form of art, and you know, like we human are creative by designs, and so it's just like what we're supposed to do anyway. So
I love that. I love that. And that might be a nice segue into my final question before we delve into your practices. And
right.
that is, Diego, you've said like living life intentionally is all for you, all about like knowing what it is that where you want to get to, right? And it's
Mhm.
about putting that level of intentionality into everyday practices that end up coming all together and leading you to where you want to get to.
Yeah.
So my question is, Where do you want to get to?
So first of all, let me say that this for me is not really the ultimate goal. What matters, it's more like the process itself, because that's how you like that the values in the process. Like even when you have to sell a service or something like that, you tell to your client the values in the process. You try to explain that because it's true. It's not like the outcome. It's just like the outcome comes eventually. It's like for sure it comes if the process is in place. Is the right process is in place. And but yeah, anyway, the ultimate goal for me in life is just being able of being creative in everything I do, and just like do things that matters for me and for other people, and and try to like do like make this world is falling apart a little better somehow. And I think like for me, like what I feel like for me it would work is probably around building something, and like try to take part and or create communities and stuff like that. For me that's the most, also because I don't know, maybe because I'm an only child, and I always felt like the community, and my parents immigrated like from the south of Italy to the north, so I didn't really have like a big family around, and so probably for me communities, and I always looked for like always a big group of friends though, and always being very sociable with people, etc. And I think like that's probably something that works well for me, just like making connection with people, and like meaningful connections, or like that can lead to create things together eventually, because creativity is easier if it's done if it's shared.
Shared. Yeah.
It leaves you fulfilled anyway as well, because when you're being creative with somebody else, and this is something that we are struggling a lot, I think, these days with after the pandemic, when we got so used to work in our rooms, isolated, and now in particular with the AI and chatbots, etc., people like tend to isolate a lot with that. And when you isolate, it's easier also to get into burnout, because you don't like the creativity, just like you don't have a soundboard, you don't like you just like it gets stuck in the room. You need to express it in a community, or like at least with one other person. That's it. Like for example, in a romantic relationship, it could be that. Right now, like my next project, I'm working on creating my, or setting up my creative agency, and like I feel like a lot of people tell me, oh, you can do this with AI, you can do that with AI, you can do that with AI. Of course I can, but I don't want to do it, because I want to being able to build a team, which is like a community or something like that, because there's so much more value in like in creating connection with real people than just like being over productive, because otherwise you're just like a freelance on steroids. You're not and I cannot say the word, sorry, entrepreneur. I struggle so much saying this word. If I want to be one, I should probably learn how to pronounce it.
So fantastic. We've got connection, we've got creativity, and we've
Yeah.
got the two together leading to impact. Diego, what is your first self-leadership practice that you're going to share with us today?
So, okay, first of all, like time spent in nature, that's like a big one for me. Because like we are nature ourselves, that's how we're like where we are supposed to be. Again, we're not supposed to stay here in little rooms like with neon lights, etc. Like luckily for me, I got like a nice window with the sun coming in, but still I would rather be like in a park, or like when I'm in Barcelona, I spend a lot of time by the sea. And just because it calms down your nervous system, like being in nature, and the overthinking switches off. For me, it's just like it's one of the most productive time I have, like when I stay in nature. Well, like an old buzz of mine, like when I was like in my early 20s, commenting of I use Instagram, I put Instagram stories by the sea sometimes, all the time. But he was like, he commented me like, yeah, but yeah, it looks like you're being lazy, etc. Like, no, I'm not lazy. This is like actually the most productive time I have during the day, because it's the most intentional one, is the most like where I get the most clarity, because otherwise you're just doing busy work again. You can spend 8 hours straight on your laptop and do way less than 30 minutes taking, like, I don't know, drawing in the middle, like in a park or something like that. For me, like, for example, also being a product designer, I get to sketch a lot, so like flows, and I'm trying to get back into brand design as well, because I want to open my agency, so I want to being able to take all of the design, the fields of design. And it's just like it's so good to just go sit on the grass and draw, and actually And it's like, I don't know, it feels like I more expanded, stuff like that, a little bit. So time in nature is a big, huge one for me. And, and also, that's also the reason why a lot of people, mainly in big cities, tend to burn out. Because there's no easy access to nature in a lot of places. And so when you're always like, I don't know, like surrounded by concrete and lights and noise and traffic, etc. You cannot think clearly. That's it. Just like having like, I don't know, like a loud TV always on in your office, something like that. You cannot focus.
I wanted to understand, what does that actually look like in practice for you? You mentioned that sometimes you work outside. Is it something that you think about as a reactive practice, as in, I feel like I need to go outside, or do you kind of intentionally plan? Okay, I'm going to take the afternoon off to go do this, or on the weekend I'm going to go do this. Like, it's probably a balance somewhere. But how do you think about making that time?
So it begins being very reactive. I really felt the need to do, to go out. And particularly something that started happening during the pandemic because I experienced, being locked in for longer time, and I actually managed to understand the value of being out and staying like. So I was living in London, just going for a walk in London Field, stuff like that. I was already feeling better. And then during my trip as well, I spent a lot of time like in mountains and forests, and you start noticing the difference. It's the more like you notice things, the more you take notes and notice things, more you actually can see the benefit of it. And it's like I don't want to sound extreme, but for me it became a negotiable. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just like it's super important. That's also like when you see like people living on island, like like highlands like Sardinia or Okinawa in Japan and stuff like that. They live long lives, and because they're in contact with nature a lot of time. They spend most of their time like in nature, and they're surrounded by the sea, which is the most important one for me. Most important like natural environment for me is the sea.
Well, in that sense, we're very different. My 2.5 years in Barcelona, I went to the sea, I don't know, 10 times maybe. It's more the trees and the parks that I find incredibly nourishing. But I also just had a similar thing last week where the whole day my mind was completely on overdrive, and it was like I was making one list after the next, like trying to kind of capture everything. And it was like I made the list, but it didn't quite feel enough, and it didn't feel like it was capturing everything. Then I was like, let me make a board of to-dos, let me whatever. And it was just going, one thing to the next. And at some point I was like, okay, I just need to get out, go into my local park, which is this beautiful wild nature park. And even then, like, it took me a good hour and a half to really get out of that buzzing in my head and really land and really be like, whoa, here I am. Just goes to show, right, how much we are in our heads and how much that grounding is just so crucial.
Yeah.
So no, I love your first practice, and I'm excited to hear what practice number 2 is.
Yeah, connecting to what you just said about like making like lists, that's another one which is important after you gain clarity though. Don't get stuck into like otherwise you get just like in a psychotic episode. And that's like another important thing, which is like to document the steps you need to take before taking them and while you take them. Like, for example, again, during my trip, something that I did, it was like I tried to document each day. I was making videos, I was sharing them on my Instagram. Didn't go viral or made a big following or anything, but it was just like I got a chance to pick up a new skill and learn how to document, journal, document, and do like another creative things to do anyway. Don't obsess over what you documented. Just like have a look after you did it, after you document everything, and then get ready to let go and move on. Right? So just like don't go and like read your journals from 3 years ago. I don't think there's much point in that. Do it like maybe on a weekly basis, and so you can move on and just like you can detach better, because if you go back too long, then you're just gonna get emotional. And time is nice. I like to, like, for example, to look at old pictures from when I was a kid. They got like a box. I love it to experience nostalgia. It's like one of my favorite feelings ever. It's very poetic and romantic. But at the same time, it's not the best if you are looking to, to go ahead in your life.
What strikes me about what you said just now, Diego, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's almost like a mix of a to-do list or like a project board with a space to self-reflect.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never really thought about it as a combination, On the one hand, they're my tools for self-reflection. And then on the other hand, they're my to-do lists. But actually, bringing the two together, I can totally see how that's a strong practice for intentionality. So it'd be great if you could just share a bit more about, both how that works in practice and yeah, how that helps you be more intentional.
I don't have that like very down yet. It's something that I'm working on. But I think this is like something I've been reflecting about too. Like this is probably when we talk about visions, right? And like for example, like CEOs, etc., have visions and they have like a plan, okay, and allow yourself for reflection and for feelings as well, because it's not again like the mind. Like if you keep reflecting on things, you just get stuck in overthinking. You need to feel like when you say like you need to trust your guts. It's real. It's the main. Like you should probably trust your guts more than your mind. You need to have like kind of a pragmatic and structured approach, but having room for feelings as well in what you're doing. When you feel good about something, it happens anyway. If you're struggling through it, it's not like you're not gonna even have the energy to do it. So like reflection allow you to feel more like and connect better with your feelings. So get structure, get a plan, a master plan, the like with your red, connector and everything, like. But then, step out, go like in a park at the sea and, reflect and feel out, ask yourself how are you feeling about where you are right now. And if it feels right, then go ahead. Otherwise, just circle back and find what's not working. That's like the design process, basically, like when you go, if you read book about the design process, design thing, it's this, iterating when something doesn't work and it feels right, you go ahead. It doesn't feel right, go back.
The question I had was in your explanation of living intentionally, you referred to the idea of these moments, right? Like how can we find these moments or the extraordinary and the ordinary and create these moments throughout the day. With the journaling, do you find that that's a good signal as to how close to that you're living, i.e. like do you find the journaling easier if you've had days where you've had more of these moments, or do you use the journaling as a way of like reflecting on whether you were able to kind of find those moments that day? And maybe you've had a hard day, maybe there's been a day where you've struggled to find the sun from the clouds, and so maybe journaling is a little bit more difficult and at that day. So like, is that a good signal for you as to how intentional you're being with your days?
Yeah, exactly. It's more like a consequence of like how intentional I'm being in my day, because I truly believe that it's more like about actions. You need to start doing things before. So like that's how you make your day intentional. Doing the small things, like go out, literally like in the morning, go out for a walk, light movement, stuff like that. Just actions first, then reflection comes. So then I don't always journal. It's not something I do every day. There are times of my life where I do it like every day, times where I don't do it. Like right now I'm not doing it, for example. I don't feel guilty if it's not like practicing all the time the same thing. It's something that as you were saying, it comes when you're already doing things intentionally, probably. I mean, at least this is how it works for me, because otherwise you're just forcing yourself into an exercise. Don't force yourself to say something if you don't have anything to say.
Makes sense. Wonderful. Well, shall we move on to your third self-leadership practice?
Yeah, again, like that. Well, earlier we were talking about don't go too back in time, learn to let go things, and so do some like letting go rituals, for example, that I really enjoy to do. It's fun. People think you're crazy, stuff like that. But like I don't know, just like throw stuff in the sea. I mean, not toxic waste, like coins or a hearing or stuff like that. Something that reminds you from somebody from your past. You need to catch ties with stuff like that. Let go, like because when you take an action of letting go, it literally subconscious responds to that. So it's just easier to overcome the thing. You trick yourself, like you manipulate yourself into that. That's like what rituals, by the way, are about. Just like subconscious work, like shadow work. I'm not sure how you call it, but yeah, and it does work. Like something that I do, for example, like I don't give like change too much around, to like people beggars on the street, but sometimes I just make a little bag. And I don't know, it's like 4 or 5 euros, of like little coins, because they, by the way, they are everywhere. Like they just like take up so much space. I give like the little bag, I give it to somebody I see on the street, maybe struggling. And so I let go, like letting go of something is making space for you. It's like kind of an egoistic way of seeing it, but it's how it works. When you let go, you're making space.
I wouldn't call it egoistic at all, right? I would call it as embracing oneself, which is really important, because how can you also embrace others if you don't embrace yourself first? And in terms of rituals, oh my God, like and letting go rituals, I couldn't agree more with you. I'm also a huge I do like one that I trialed for the first time on the 31st of December 25 was, I wanted to do letting go in a slightly more kind of formal way, right? And I was toying with the idea of fire, but then I was like, no, I'm going to put the flat on fire, knowing myself. Then I was like, you know what? Let's just buy some string. So I was with a really close friend. We were celebrating together, and we bought this string, and we cut it into pieces for every single thing that we wanted to let go. And so she was then holding the string, and I was cutting it like in the middle and saying, I let go of X, Y, and Z. And I had, I think, like 28 strings or something, a lot.
That's a lot of stuff to let go.
Like it's exactly as you say, Diego, that it was this embodied physical like alignment of like both intellectually and emotionally. I am now really ready to let go, to clear the way, and to make space for different things, for more beautiful things. And it felt like a huge relief. So it was insane. But and this is what leads me to my next question for you. On the 31st of December, it really, like that ritual, it really hit home for me, and it really allowed me to let go. I've also noticed that there have been other times where I tried to, where it didn't quite work. And my sense is that probably maybe it wasn't quite fully ready to be let go of yet. I'm not sure, but I'm wondering, do you have any pointers as to what needs to be in place, what needs to be kind of the context for letting go to really be effective?
I don't know, just like for me, just like I like to make it cathartic. So just like by the like literally like throwing stuff in the sea by myself, like in early morning, stuff like that, or like staring at the moon, like the full moon, just by myself. Like probably something like that. You say like you were with a friend as well, when you were doing that. I think it's way better to do these things, and this like also connects with what I was saying earlier. Like you are the person that you're allowed to be when you're all alone, basically. So basically, if you do that, you have to do these things alone, so it can actually. It's just like it's a you time. It's like a moment for you to celebrate and do. So just like probably doing it alone is something that is more like intense emotionally. Yeah, I think so.
See, I would agree and disagree. Like on the one hand, I do think that doing it alone is something very like intimate and powerful, right? But at the same time, coming back to your point around community, right? When you do it with not like random 10 people, right? But with somebody who knows you deeply and who's a witness and has been a witness for you, and you're a witness for this other person, then that's like that mutual witnessing, I feel, can amplify the energy.
Okay, but those are not rituals of letting go. Those are rituals of connections. It's different. It's like
But
clubbing culture, for example. Like you're in Berlin, clubbing culture is all about that. It's where connection happens. That's like my opinion, of course. I think it's a different type of ritual.
I totally see what you're saying. However, in that case, it was letting go, right? But she was holding the string for me to be able to cut through, and she was witnessing what I was saying. I was saying it out loud, not just in my thoughts, but actually like physically bringing the words into the space. And I feel like in that sense, that holding and that witnessing was actually very powerful.
Okay, so it's not that the case you were talking about where it didn't feel like it worked. In
Yeah,
that case,
no, in that case, it worked really well. There were other
okay.
cases before where it didn't work. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like if you're in like engaging in something like that, like I think it means that you are ready, because otherwise you wouldn't even find the strength to do it. You know,
Mm.
I remember like getting attached to some objects just because they were like from some certain people.
Mm.
You know, and then thinking when I let that thing, it's like maybe a little thing go, and I was like, and now I think about it, it's like, how was it possible I was so attached to that, to an object,
Mm.
you know? And just like, yeah, it doesn't adds up in my mind now. But I remember at the time it was intense for me, you know, and doing the whole thing.
It sounds like the intention of the action was to let go of this, let's call it a thing, because obviously we don't know what it was. But like, I feel like there's probably equal measure in realizing that it didn't work. Like maybe there's something in that data that is there for some reason, right? Like there's a signal there to at least now you know, okay, oh, I wasn't ready, or it wasn't ready, or there's something here, and like, okay, well, it's not the outcome that you'd gone into it expecting, but like for somebody, I feel like there's maybe some use in that signal in itself as to why, or maybe it's just not the right time, and maybe there's just something useful in that data itself.
Sometimes it's not just like also like letting go of like the person, of the I don't know, even the house, or like the space where it's just like about like letting go of that version you experience of maybe that person, you know. And let's talk about people, because that's like, let's be honest, that's like where these things is more difficult for everybody, you know. It doesn't mean that you have to, you know, like let go, like do a ritual of letting go and then you cut off the person. Maybe it's not that, you know. It's just about like you outgrow the version of you and that person, and maybe, as you know, maybe there's time to it's time to find, maybe I realize time for a ritual of connection again, you know. Maybe because, you know, like maybe because also the other like person in the equation has let go some stuff, and now it's has got more space, you know. I'm not talking about like necessarily about, you know, like romance, like it could be like even like with family, it could be like with business partners as well, like kind of applies some like the same thing. And you know, maybe you're not ready to cut, like burn the bridges. That's the thing. Yeah, just like you're ready to build a new one together. Yeah, that's why I try to be positive a little.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that positive note,
Yeah.
shall we move on to self-leadership practice number 4?
Rest, super important. Like take naps, go on short holidays, weekends, etc. Otherwise, you don't have like the energy and the clarity to get through the because the more you want to achieve, the harder it gets. And if you don't learn how to rest, it's just not gonna happen. That's the thing, you know. And you're gonna burn out. And the higher you're trying to get, the like the bigger the burnout will be if you don't learn how to rest and reset, you know, grounding, stuff like that. Those are like napping as well, like power naps, like 15-minute naps. You start a new day basically in the afternoon, you know. And having fun in general, you know, also go like partying with friends sometimes I think we completely detached from what was the human experience until like I don't know, 100 years ago, you know. And now just because it's kind of different, because we have different technologies, different media, stuff like that, it doesn't mean that we're not doing the same of what the people were doing like 3,000 years ago, you know. We are literally doing the same because we are wired that way.
Diego, what advice would you give someone like me who struggles with rest?
Just come to Italy.
I just got back. It didn't work.
You were just here in Italy. Yeah, you told me.
Recently, yeah.
Yeah. So just move here then. I don't know. But seriously, like, just like, you know, learn to like lock in sometimes during the day, you know. After lunch, take like a 20-minute, like just stay 20 minutes on the sofa. Don't, no phone, no stuff like that, you know. Maybe put some nice music, calming music. That's like something that always help. And just, you know, try to fall asleep a little bit. Allow yourself to do, because we're not. It's not that we are not able to rest. It's not, we're not allowed ourselves to rest most of the time. You know, because we feel like we have to perform. Otherwise, we like other people won't think that we are enough or something like that. You know, like it comes down to how think valuable we are, you know? That's the trap, you know? Like, you're probably more valuable if you rest. If you're like tired all the time. You don't have any help if you're tired all the time, you know? Think about it in the terms, you know, like I'm gonna operate better after I do it. And so it becomes like something that you need to, you know, like you actually embrace doing. And you enjoy, not just enjoy, of course you enjoy resting. It's like it becomes something that it's important for you in order to achieve what you want.
This might be my favorite self-leadership practice out of all of the ones we've had so far, honestly. And as you were talking, Diego, I thought another word for resting is being, right? Because and I love this this phrase is, after all, we are not a human doing, we are a human being, right?
Mhm.
And so often we just do, and even outside of work we do, right? We exercise and we self-improve and we read and and it's all got this like energy of doing. And I feel the most effective way of really stepping into rest is just being, allowing yourself to be in the moment and let whatever wants to happen through you, right? Like similar to what you were saying earlier, Diego, where it's more of a connecting with, what do I want to do? What do I want to create? What wants to happen? Which is a very different energy to, I have to do something now.
We think about feelings, you know, we rationalize feelings, but it's literally about like when you feel the goosebump, stuff like that, you know. Like if your guts don't feel well, like you don't feel well in the stomach, that's what feeling is, you know. And when you prioritize that over the thinking, you are maybe less productive as society define productivity, but you're more intentional, you're more creative, and you after you do create, like you did like something creative and intentional, etc. You feel rested anyway. You feel energized, as we were saying earlier, you know. That's the type of work that actually matter. Anything else is just like, I don't know, people enjoy busy work so much. I don't know why. Everybody's so busy. You're not busy. No, but also now you have AI. I don't believe you're busy. AI is busy for you. Just do something that is meaningful, and you know, and you will feel much better about yourself. And when you feel better about yourself, like everything around you works better, and people feel better around you. And more community again.
Couldn't agree more. So, Diego, that brings us to your final self-leadership practice for today. What is it?
So again, like probably this is like the conductor of everything I said so far is about like make sure you're doing something creative every day. Some crazy ideas, just tell it to somebody. Just like draw, even if you don't have like a lot of people think they have to be good at drawings, and you don't. Like, you just need to scribble and be messy with what you're doing. Express yourself. Because it's like if you're not expressing yourself, you're keeping everything inside and you're depressing, you know, like if you think about it as a, you know, like a frequency length. So like, let's say here is like creativity and expression. And if you don't do it, you just go down in a lower frequency, which is depression. And you can't move, you cannot go out of your house, and you feel stuck and you burn out eventually, you know? So just like if you keep like doing like small creative things every day, even stupid, or even do it for yourself, show it to other people, just do something, just like that's something out of yourself. And it's like the little spark that starts everything else eventually. So like for example, something cooking is just like it's so fun, just like going picking up the ingredients and mixing them like without even following a recipe, just mix them as you feel, you know, like taste and see, okay, I like it, I don't like it. That's like, you know, like for example, chefs are like some of the most creative people in the world, you know. And yeah, like music, if you're into music, I'm like, you know, I'm into art, like more like painting, stuff like that. In general, I'm lucky that my job allows me to be creative, like in any given moment, basically. So, uh, but again, like as I was saying earlier, it's just like if you have your projects, like your podcast or your business or anything, that's already like a good way of being creative. You know, that's it's art basically. You know, business like entrepreneurship, it's a form of art in a way. You know.
How would you encourage someone to start this if someone's role isn't that of a creative, right? Like I would definitely not consider myself to be a creative person, so I speak on behalf of all of our non-creatives who are listening to this. How can I find some space and some time to be creative if I'm not. For example, cooking is tough for me. Period. Drawing even worse. So where do I find this? Where do I find this in me if it's not already coming out?
So I mean, like you have a business, right? So you
Hmm.
already have like a lot of space to be creative with that, I guess, because like you go like to problem to solve every day, and you have to find creative ways to solve the problems. For example,
Interesting. But do you think that you would get the same benefit from the creative process if it's regarding work as if you were being creative about something that was, for example, more play?
I think I'm not sure about this, to be honest. Really depends how you. I guess like if you're really enjoying what you're building, it should feel already like playtime. I think. I think I posted something yesterday on LinkedIn. I'm making like logos for a client. I was just sketching logos on paper, and I literally like I shared like some of the sketches, and I said like this almost feel like free time for me. Because it does actually. I don't like if you're truly creative, even like in your business, etc. It doesn't feel like work. It feels like expression. But again, of course, this is not the reality for everybody. And so something I don't know, like something easy. Do something easy, like sketching something. Like start doodling. Even if you're not good at drawing, just like start like doodling something, and try to notice how you feel after you do it. Try to again like kind of like reflect on what you're doing, like how you feel after you did it. And Anna and I were having this conversation a while ago, and she was I was telling her like sometimes I just like I'm fairly good at drawing. I can do some illustration stuff like that. I'm not crazy good, um but sometimes I take like a piece of paper and I doodle, because like it literally takes like the doodles you have in your head, you put them on paper basically, and you get clarity, and you feel rested, and you feel like more in tune with yourself. There are many hobbies out there, just like I'm pretty sure like everybody has a hobby these days, and don't try to be productive with it. Like do it because it makes you feel better. That's the most important thing.
I wonder if the theme here is actually play, because I think you actually used the word in your explanation that like your creative role feels like play to you. So I wonder whether one precedes the other. Like for you, play is a creative process. And so actually, maybe for those of us who don't consider ourselves to be creative, I feel like, yes, I have to be creative in work to solve problems, and I agree. But to me, that does feel like work. But actually, maybe what I should transfer from the practice you're telling me is find room to play. And if you can find something that feels like play, then I would gain the same emotion, the energy that you get from being creative in a different way. Because I was thinking about my son as well. Like, I think children are great examples of this. They are able to find play in very little. Like they don't need much space. They don't need much in the way of toys. Like they're able to just play and be. And it's quite a similar outcome, I assume. So maybe it's to find a way that how can we play more?
Well, okay, maybe when it comes to like in particular, I mean, I'm not usually giving you business advice or anything. You've been in business longer than me for sure. But I mean, it probably, like if you don't feel like it's actually enjoyable what you're doing, maybe because again, like coming back to making sure you're building the right team around you, that gives you support in the part you enjoy the less, so you can play with the rest of it. That's the thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's why it's important to create a community, which is your team in this case, the community.
makes sense.
It's not, don't call them family, otherwise they'll feel like you're. It's just like a community that is there to build something together. That's totally fine, I guess. Just like, and allow them to express themselves so they can actually, they can be. I don't want to say the word productive because again, it's probably misunderstood in this context. It's just like they're gonna be like gonna do meaningful work. That's the thing. Try to always prioritize for yourself what feels more meaningful over what's productive, which sounds counterintuitive maybe if like people will call you lazy, but eventually it will work out. Eventually, you're gonna be, you have to be a little bit delusional, but again, if you have a team, that's like it's easy to overcome. You just delegate. And this is something that I need to work for me, for example, because in particular with my own craft, I struggle so much trusting other people doing it, like delivering. And this is like not something that I need to face myself now. Because if I can, okay, I can find like a product manager. I love working with the product manager. An engineer, love working with the engineers. Another designer, I've been working with like larger team of designer, and like most of it, like sometimes I enjoy it, but there's so much friction all the time because like everybody, because it's like your job becomes a huge part of your ego anyway, and like in order to be better, you have to like lower your ego to in order to grow, and it's the most important thing is like to delegate what you identify the most in your like job, work, activity, etc.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. This creating the room for expression,
Yeah,
both for oneself
definitely.
and for others, and also what you said at the very outset of this practice, the expression being the remedy for depression, or the antithesis to depression. That really hit a nail. Yeah. On that note, we are coming to the end of our conversation, which has been super inspiring. Before we wrap up, Diego, could you give our listeners a very brief recap of your 5 self-leadership practices?
Nature, first of all, one of the most important thing, because again, we are part of nature. We're not like observer of nature, just like who we are. So we need to stay in touch with ourselves. Like stay in touch with nature is a way to be in touch with ourselves anyway. Then letting go is so important because it allows you to create more room for what comes next and for more aligned things. And you need like a ritual of letting go. That's like very important. Then rest, because otherwise you're just like a tired zombie around. You're not of any use. Fourth was documenting things, and like reflect on what you documented and allow yourself to feel and not just think about what you did. Like, how do you feel about what you experienced? And and if it feels good, it means you can move on. If it doesn't feel good, it means you probably have something to work out before moving on. And the fifth was just be creative, like stay creative as much as you can in life, because that's the frequency we are supposed to like stay at as human being. And because like, at least how I see it, it's just like on the other side of the spectrum of the being like of depression, expression, depression. So and also like something that I didn't say earlier, just to close it, like find like the meaning in the words. Also, like when you speak multiple languages, Lana, you do like speak like 4 or 5 of them, I lost count. It's just like you see how different words in different languages actually mean something. And sometimes we just give it for granted because but sometimes it's just like the word literally means something, like that we are overlooking sometimes, and so give meaning to what you're saying, the words you're choosing, and the way you're talking to other people or talking yourself is also, rewire the way you think. So it's just like it's important about, pick the right words when you talk about something. Even if my English is a little broken sometimes, but yeah, no, the meaning of it, I think we got it.
Absolutely, 100%. I could not agree more. And my 2 cents on that is substitute wherever possible. Instead of saying I should, I want. It makes all the difference.
That's
It
what I
makes,
was talking
yeah.
about. Perfect.
Oh, amazing. Well, Diego, thank you so much.
Thank
I have
you.
thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and I'm taking so much from it. I'm sure the same is true for Josh and hopefully also for our listeners. So thank you so much. And yeah, this brings us to the close of yet another episode of the Self Leadership Podcast.
Bye, everyone.